president voted for it. And I don't think Gachagua is sleeping easy now.
You can't. You can't sleep when your bread is at stake.
Yes.
And so obviously Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua now in trouble, politically speaking. You know, one of our famous long-time ministers, cabinet ministers from our region called Noah Wekesa, every election cycles, he always purports to be having an ability to predict who will become president. And in most local rallies in our village there, whenever he's hosting maybe the main candidate,
yes,
he always uses his few minutes to just tell us who will be the next president. And you know, locally there is a bird.
Yes.
A local bird there, which I think every community has, but ours we call it Kwesle. Kwesle is a bird that comes and sort of, the old leaders, our forefathers used to use it. It predicts whether things are going to be good or not. It's a predictor of things. And so he likes to maneuver as Kwesle, you know, that bird.
Yes.
And so I think I can almost now begin to qualify as somebody that can be able to predict that this is what is bound to happen. I can become, yeah, very true. I can now start to become a Kwesle.
Yeah.
Because I saw this from the very beginning and the long journey, Fred, we've had together over the years.
Yes.
You know, I've been saying this, that from the moment Gachagua, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua began to become an option of being a running mate to the then Deputy President William Ruto. And I kept telling you on your radio show that the personalities of these individuals are both strong, they're both well-funded, and they both do not mind taking risks. That's the culture of any businessman, is that you know that I'm attempting something, but it can go both ways, and you don't mind both outcomes. And so, luckily for them, they went in, they took the gamble, and they formed government. And President Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto made history. You know, he was the first presidential candidate to first be able to run the first time and win the first round, something that no other candidate had done.
Actually, has he ever lost an election?
He has never lost any election. You know,
yeah, he's never lost an election.
And maybe not as a person, but he was part of ODM, but as a person, he's never lost an election. But you know, presidential elections are slightly different. You must understand that up until 2013, he was only running in Eldoret North, which is largely his clansmen. But to be able to run a countrywide operation and be able to turn around regions that had never voted for any other person, because the Western region, 611,000 votes were historic votes for that president. No other president has ever achieved such votes. In South Nyanza, in those areas of Kisii and Nyamira, you know, the president got a lot of votes over there. He even was able to convert Migori, part of Lower Migori, towards the border, Kuria East, Kuria West. They voted for UDA. That was historic. And so they formed government. Now we are here now, 2 years into the line. I said, if this deputy president does not manage his personality, or him and his partners do not agree that these are our strengths and our weakness, you know, Fred, you can come and say, you know, sometimes I talk a lot. So that when you're with me, please be stepping on my foot, so that I do not say something that will affect both of us.
Yes.
Because we're human beings, and sometimes we're bound to make mistakes. So the deputy president is here, the impeachment motion is here. If there was ever a doubt that there are divisions in this government, it is now clear that the president and the deputy president,
as day and night,
it is now extremely clear that they do not clearly read from the same script. And the president has made his decision. It's a very bold decision. No other deputy president or the vice presidents who were there before has ever been impeached in this country. It's a new process, legally speaking. And, you know, the late Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was only bullied out of government.
Yes.
But nobody impeached him.
Yeah.
And I think in that parliament, nobody could dare impeach him because of the stature. Being that the person that literally formed that government, you know, President Kenyatta just came to lead the way into the government.
Yes.
But the machinations that went into building that government and the campaigners and the agitators that were there was all organized by the late Jaramogi Odinga. Even the MP from Ndia in Kiambu here, who actually resigned so that to pave way for Jomo to become president.
Yes.
Originally, they had approached a different person. He refused to resign.
Yes.
And Jaramogi had now, because he was a personal friend to this MP, he told him, you have to step aside for Mzee to come in. And it took somebody stepping aside for Jomo to come in. So all that effort having been Jaramogi, I doubt whether in parliament they would have impeached him.
Yeah.
It was now just between him and the president, and I think out of principle he chose that I'm going to move on.
I was listening to him early this week,
Yes.
when he hosted leaders, radio stations from the Rift Valley.
And the mountain as well.
Yes. And what he was saying is that the president's PA was assuming that he can order him around.
Yeah.
And you know the PA.
Yes.
They are an official PA.
They are an official PA, absolutely.
Yeah. The one who's, I remember one time they had gone to celebrate something concerning the same guy, and they were talking of how powerful this guy is.
Yeah.
And I remember Murkomen, including Gachagua himself, was saying how this guy is just something else.
Yeah.
Well, he turned out to be something else indeed.
Yeah. It was always going to happen because, Fred, we always say that politics is about interest. And it's very easy to talk and make plans when you've not acquired power. Just like in business, when you start a company and you have all these ideas and you have partners. That's why it's always important, just like what happens in marriages. Before you get married, you go to church and then you have what you call the premarital counseling. And those counselors get a platform to preempt what can happen in this marriage going forward, so that whoever comes into this marriage, or those who are choosing to get married, are prepared to face the challenges that are going to come in that particular marriage. Unfortunately, in politics, we do not have those premarital counseling, so that people can begin to understand the realities of getting into that union. Because, Fred, we do have people who go into marriages and they sign, they say for better, for worse. And then you get in 2-3 times, there's no talking, and somebody says, I'm suffering. And he walks out because then it clearly means he didn't even understand, or he or she didn't understand what was on that paper when they were signing. Yet they did it in front of everybody. And so the president, when they formed power, obviously, this is somebody that is very ambitious, was going always want to have to build his political capital. Remember, he was not just a campaigner, he was an investor in that campaign. So the level of entitlement that this president had, this deputy president had in this campaign, was far much beyond those ones that were being given money to go and promote me. And if I do that, I might not owe you much. But if you come in and say, I'm going to give you 250 million shillings to put into a campaign, you know very well that
this guy is well
invested in this. So there's absolutely no way that they were going to control him. And so unfortunately, those players around the presidency, because, Fred, I have once gone to State House 2-3 times during President Kibaki's time and once during President Uhuru Kenyatta's time. There's something big about being close to power, that even a sweep at State House can easily abuse a whole professor of the state. Not because he's any special.
Because he's at State House.
Yeah, that's it. And that's what used to happen during Nyayo days. Remember Kanu days? Just being the Kanu branch chairman for Muranga was a big deal. You understand? And your old friend from Kangema,
Kamotho.
The late Kamotho practiced that very well. The folks in Kangema would always fail him, but a day later, he's still a cabinet minister. And I always tend to think he probably did the most development more than even some of the MPs who were elected in that county or district in those days, because of what he did with power. And so for people like Farouk Kibet and the other players around the president, this is the first time many of them are villagers. They've never been in that space.
You call him a villager.
He is.
So he was bullying the deputy. James, Farouk, the deputy president, in one of the conversations, said one of the reasons why he fell out with the current government is that some of the juniors like Farouk Kibet and others, I believe this is Oscar Sudi, imagined in their minds that they can tell the deputy president what to do, when to do it. And when he stood against them, that's when, things went completely south.
The deputy president is being honest and dishonest at the same time. He's being dishonest because that is not the only reason.
Yes.
Looking at the impeachment motion on the 11 grounds that were tabled to impeach Rigathi Gachagua, there's one of the points, a strong one, that he has amassed close to 5 billion shillings in 2 years. And that is just a random figure they have quoted. Probably the figure is higher. And if he has amassed that, how about the president? You saw how much Kindiki amassed in 2 years because he's a junior officer. So people with the stature of the deputy and the president can amass more. It's a cabal of thieves who are now differing on who should steal more and steal where. Probably Rigathi wanted to steal somewhere where Ruto steals. So I understand his dishonesty. But on the honesty part, he is honest that junior officers have been looking down upon him. And it's public that everyone knows that those around Ruto have been stubborn and obstinate. Obviously, they have been granted powers and the stubbornness by the head of state because they run his affairs. Most of these so-called junior officers are actually senior than the deputy president because they have access to the president directly and they transact his business. Because the president does not use the deputy or cannot use the deputy to do his business because then he would be empowering the deputy financial-wise. So he's using some of the junior officers to do his bidding and his business. And this is a scenario that reminds me of Nicholas Biwott. Biwott was the number 2. That every vice president to Moi was junior to him. That him, as just another minister, was senior than all vice presidents. That they had to go through him to get to the president. And that is the same situation we have with Farouk Kibet and Oscar Sudi now. They are closer to the president than the deputy or any other person. Even the speaker and the chief justice is close to the president. You remember there's a time when Sudi and Gachagua were working together. Sudi, Gachagua, President Ruto, I think Justin Muturi, Kithure Kindiki, Kimani Ichung'wah and some other leaders were working together. And Sudi was so close to the president, overshadowing the deputy president. So the president had to push him off so as to bring the deputy president to light. Kenyans should have read the signs. It is apparent, it's clear for everyone that Oscar Sudi and Farouk run this government, not the deputy. But this is not the only reason why they have grounds for impeachment against the deputy president. And to talk about Farouk, so many Kenyans don't want to talk about Farouk Kibet. I understand, because he's another Biwott. And you know what Biwott was involved in. And the conversation around Farouk Kibet tails off before it even begins. But I'm asking myself some questions. How powerful is this guy? Or how emboldened has he been empowered so that he can threaten the deputy president and the entire country? Because there is information that he sanctioned whatever happened during the Gen Z protest, the arrests, the abductions, the everything. And it is a sad situation. And there is information that, and this information can be corroborated by what Francis Atwoli said. Francis Atwoli, speaking at another function some few days ago, said this deputy president should be arrested. Hawezi kula president kichwa. I cannot quote him directly, but he said something of that sort. And Farouk, unangoja nini? Huyu shenzi sana, anasumbua sisi kama nani? So I'm asking myself, is Farouk
Atwoli is telling Farouk?
Yes.
Yeah.
I am asking myself, is Farouk Kibet the Inspector General? Is Farouk Kibet Mohamed Amin the DCI director? Does Farouk Kibet have investigative or arresting powers in this country? How does a PA have such powers? So it tells us what has been going down in the corridors of power that they have not been speaking about. It's only now that they are speaking about it. And when it all comes to light, there are MPs and senior government officials who will expose Sudi too. Because while now Farouk has been exposed, it is just only fair if we expose Sudi. Tell us how many times you've tried to access the president and Oscar Sudi blocked the door. How many times have you tried to have a meeting with the president and Oscar Sudi said no, as if he's the secretary to the president? We need to be honest as a country. Yes, we need to impeach Gachagua, because failing to impeach Gachagua or saying Gachagua should not go is
So you
sabotage to us.
You support his impeachment?
Yes, and not because I support the government, because I want them gone. The public has lost confidence and trust in both of them.
Gachagua can
even
be John
those
the
who voted
Baptist.
for them.
Can be the John the Baptist. He can lead the way so that then Ruto can follow him.
In fact, it can be the pace setter. You see, there is a Kipchoge running, and the Kipchoge is us, the Kenyan people. They have pace setted for us. Now it's about time the real runners, the real marathoners take the stage. And we are going to run as long as it takes. Because I'm telling people, the battle is not for 2027. It is 2027 and beyond. So what happens if in 2027 we do not get half the number of MPs as Gen Zs and as the rest of the country who are pro the people? What happens if we do not get Gen Zs and pro-people officials in all state parastatals, what happens? Does the fight stop there? We have to keep pushing till we have people who care about the common person and people who have the interests of the common mwananchi at heart in all offices, whether in state parastatals, in legislative offices, and in policy making offices.
But Gaire,
yes,
now that this process has gotten to where it is,
yes,
today, Kenyans around the world, around the country, will basically be giving their views on whether this gentleman should pack and go home, whether should he be impeached, and all that.
Yeah.
It has gone to, I believe this is a point of no return.
Absolutely, and as far as the process is concerned.
Yeah, as far as the process is concerned, and as far as his impeachment is concerned, I mean, his dice is literally cast. Can he be able to claw back from the current environment?
Politically speaking, Fred, the point where we've reached is a point of no return. So the deputy president, if at all he didn't know who his enemies are, they are clearly written. They signed their signatures and the names were read out. He knows who is with him and who is not.
Yes.
So politically speaking, we're at a point where it's a point of no return. But legally, remember, the move of the motion can still pull back the motion, because it's just it hasn't even gotten to a level where the MPs vote. You know, this thing comes from Parliament and then it goes to the Senate, and in between there, he has to be given time to come and defend himself.
Yeah, he will appear on Tuesday.
Exactly. So there's a whole process that is supposed to be done, and my take is, because he only has between today and Tuesday to make this decision politically. Do I fight this impeachment? Do I resign and politically fight this government? The time is only between today and Monday, because once he appears either in person or through his lawyers or any representation on that Tuesday, it means then he validates this process and then becomes it becomes tied to it.
So if he appears in Parliament on Tuesday,
yeah,
he cannot jump ship,
because then he has validated the processes. Come there, you see, for them they have to prove whether they went through, and if Deputy President Gachagua or anybody was to challenge this impeachment in court after the decision, you see, you have to, you usually question the process, which is what Maraga was alluding to, Justice Maraga was alluding to the other time, that yes, you did this and this, but there are steps which were not done. Results were not declared per constituency, and yet that is a legal process, and that alone is enough to say that the process was not constitutionally followed. So if he turns up, remember, they've already collected the signature. The motion has been approved in Parliament. It is now going through public participation. And then now you turn up to defend yourself.
So you've rubber stamped the process.
You understand? Up until now, it can be considered hearsay. You know, you have to, until I'm served and someone that I'm impeached, you know, that is hearsay from people, you understand? So he can run away from it. And the only way to do it, then, that's what I'm saying, he has two very quick decisions he has to make. Either he decides to go through the impeachment, but it would have serious political consequences to him because he's a startup politician. Remember, Rigathi Gachagua is a first-time member of Parliament. It's when he's starting his career. And in Kenya, you can do politics up to 80. We have 70 and 80-year-olds. The new and the old and the new party leaders of ODM. You know, there's an old party leader of ODM. He turns 80 in January. Then the new party leader, who is a Nyang' Nyong'o, is 78 today. So you can imagine you're 50, if you're 58 years like Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua.
You have a lot of time. In politics.
That's all that, and even the European, even the US, Biden and Bernie Sanders, they're in their 80s. So you can imagine at 58, you're still a young man by all standards, you understand? So if him being a first-time member of Parliament, and like say Martha Karua, who's been an MP for 20 years and been in politics 30 years, Kalonzo Musyoka, who's been an MP since 1986, he'll be 40 years in active politics up until. That guy has had cops at his gate for the last 40 years. Ever since he became a member of Parliament. And you know, now as Vice President, he still he receives protection from the state. So those ones can say, I'm tired. But not a first-time member of Parliament who's just come in and is beginning to enjoy his state power.
So if you were his political advisor, now, between today, because
today and Tuesday, or
between today and Tuesday, what would you be doing and what would you ask him to do?
Now that it's very clear that he's being impeached, it's no longer a rumor. There's a legal process that is going through. and it's going through all the required process that that's why this time, for the first time, and I had the Speaker of the National Assembly and some of the members of Parliament during the hearings the other day, and they were very clear that they're trying to be very keen so that this is, when this is challenged in court, there is no question about the process. That's why for the very first time, this is the kind of impeachment that it has been taken to counties, which is something that never happens with the other impeachments. The Parliamentary Service Commission has actually funded a public participation process with venues and locations and funding to make sure that nobody goes to court. Nobody goes to court to say there's something that is missing. So it's very clear that his fate is sealed. So he has only two options, I'm telling you, Fred, because, and probably that's what I was heading to.
Yes.
I'm saying if he goes through the process, then they've ended his career as an elected leader.
Yes.
It ends on Tuesday, if he goes through this process. But if he believes he's young and has time to contribute in the political process, remember the deputy president has not been charged in any court in this country for any criminal liability.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
Up until today, he's an innocent Kenyan. You understand?
Yes.
And even if they start charging him on Wednesday after impeaching him or after resigning, it's a process that has to go through the magistrate court, the High Court, the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, a process that can take 3-4 years and will be in another election.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
If President William Ruto and the former President Uhuru Kenyatta were charged at ICC, the highest court on earth, for crimes against humanity, not pickpocketing. You know, crimes against humanity means you've sat in a corner and decided, I'm going to persecute a whole community.
Yes.
And they were still cleared because the court were very clear. They were saying up until you exhaust all your legal processes, you're free and you're an innocent Kenyan. So my advice to him would be that because he's a young politician, politically speaking, the age could be advanced, but you know, as a politician, he's young. He has time to continue playing. And I saw the other day, I was some other media station there, and I ran into former governor of Kiambu, his name Kafogo, the way you call him.
Yes.
And he was saying, and his sentiments were very clear, he was saying, if I was the deputy president, I would choose to leave and fight another day, which means then I can resign from this process, so that now I'm a free bird. And because I have the capacity and numbers, you see, he will become the biggest challenger of President William Ruto just by declaring he's running for president.
Yes.
Because with 4 million votes there, even if he gets half, he's already at par with the president. Because the president has just about 2.5 million votes from his region. Just by resigning and maybe being able to mobilize half of his community, because there are those who like him and those who don't like him. He's already a lead contender for that race, way ahead of Kalonzo Musyoka or any other candidate.
James, if you are the deputy president's advisor, political advisor, between today and Tuesday, what would you be telling him?
I would tell him to go through with the process.
To go through the process?
Yes, I want him to go through with the process. Because unlike Sini Angaira here, I am not sympathetic to Gachagua.
No, in this case,
No, I want
you in this case, you are his advisor.
As his advisor, I would want him gone too.
How would he take
They are redeemable. They are redeemable, incorrigible. I want them gone. As his advisor, I would have suffered enough under his tribal nonsense. I would have suffered enough under his bigotry. I would have suffered enough under his overambitiousness. I mean, there is no difference between Gachagua and Ruto. It's only that Uhuru was more benevolent.
Yeah.
Because if Uhuru wasn't benevolent, he would have assassinated Ruto or impeached him.
True.
Uhuru was actually so magnanimous that he let Ruto run his mouth for close to 10 years. Because Ruto started running his mouth right from 2013. And that is the unfortunate situation, that we have a president who is unforgiving, who is not benevolent, who wants to settle political scores, and who has trouble with someone who is more ambitious than him. That is what the problem is. And he wants to panga us. Hiyo mpangwingwi sasa yeye ndio anatupanga. He wants to panga for us who becomes president in 2027 and into prosperity. The same thing Moi wanted to do with KANU. He wanted to pick a candidate for us, because Jomo told him, ukitoka achia my son. Hiyo ndo maneno tunataka kupangwa hapa. And President Ruto probably is not comfortable with having someone from the mountain run this country after him. There are already rumors that he is grooming Musalia. And the problem with Musalia is another Bosco.
I'm also not comfortable with somebody from the mountain. I'm from the mountain, but I'm not comfortable with somebody from the mountain, again, running this country after somebody from the Rift Valley. I think the time is ripe now
Yeah.
for somebody else from a different region to run this country?
My point was,
Yes.
Ruto does not want people from the mountain, not because he's thinking about the benefit of the rest of the country, just because he does not want someone powerful enough to go after him. And Musalia is another Bosco, a dog that barks when the neighbor comes in or the intruder comes in, runs
Another Bosco.
and runs under the bed.
But he doesn't
runs
bite.
under the bed. He doesn't bite. He's another Kidure. I mean, apart from the soprano voice, what is Kidure Kindiki? I am being honest here. That this guy is pangaing us for 2027 and beyond, and he wants people who will not go after him because they know him. Gachagua knows how much Ruto has stolen. He knows all investments, both overseas and in the country. They know each other. These are people who've been around power for some time. Gachagua has been around power for a long time. Even when he was a DO, he was still around power. He knows almost all government secrets from Moi's time, Kenyatta's time to this date. These people know each other. Yeah. If they want to expose each other, they will wash their dirty linen in public, and we will know things we never knew. Because I know if Gachagua goes through with this impeachment, he's going to tell us things that are to our benefit that we didn't know. He's going to tell us Ruto owns this, Ruto owns this, the artificial fuel shortage we have, Ruto is causing this because he wants his company to be propelled. Ruto has this government tender. Expose, tell us, how much has he stolen? We need to know. Fuel our anchor so that we can go back to the streets to remove Ruto too. I mean, we want both of you gone. As his advisor, I would still want him gone.
You know, Fred, Fred, just very quickly,
Yes.
You know, unfortunately, the danger with democracy is that then the people decide who they elect as their leaders, which is unfortunate. That's why sometimes we used to sit and say, how does Mugabe keep winning the elections? But when you go into the dynamics of what happens in the politics of Zimbabwe, between the Ndebeles and the Shonas were always pro-Mugabe because he was their own. The Ndebeles were the minority communities that even though Changirai was a Shona too, but his base was the other side. You understand? So he banked, just like the way Deputy President William Ruto ran his race, he's a minority candidate because he only had 2 million votes. But he was able to convince the base that was not happy with Uhuru to become his base. So that's what the late Changirai used to do. So he was a Shona who was largely backed by the Ndebeles, but the majority Shona supported President Mugabe.
Yes.
So even when Mugabe was being kicked out of power, there were people who were shedding tears. And why are you leaving? Yet outside here, we've wondered for 30 years, why is Mugabe leaving? Because sometimes you're looking at it from a personal point of view, and then you forget the realities of what happens in that the ground, and then you're unable to make a right decision. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has two things that go for him in this election and for any politician, and I've said it many times. Numbers and resources. You know, Fred, even a dog, which does not qualify to be a candidate because you have to be a human being with an ID to run for any seat. If it has numbers and resources, will have a head start ahead of you because it can get to the many regions faster and it can convince more people earlier than you that it has the best ideas. You understand? So we cannot rule out Rigathi Gachagua's exit plan, because he has to do it within the next 3 days, and it will be a very big decision.
So the thing is this, what Didmas Barasa said is literally going to come to pass in the sense that December 25th, Rigathi Gachagua will be celebrating Christmas as an ordinary citizen. That's what he said.
Yeah.
So from the look of things, Didmas Barasa is going to become a, what's that bird again?
Kwesule.
He's going to be a Kwesule. He's a Kwesule. He's already pronounced, and it's going to become, because I don't see Gachagua winning this process in Parliament. Absolutely. He's lost it completely. ODM doesn't support him. UDA doesn't support him. Members, there are other small parties, as in he's gone.
Yeah, and you see, if he resigns today, he does not become an ordinary citizen.
Yes.
He becomes a former deputy president. So then he's entitled to the state security.
So that's the catchword.
Yeah.
If he resigns before the process, he still maintains his position as the former deputy president.
Yeah, he's still entitled to the security. You know, even Saleh are receiving that today.
Oh, so he will receive the security. He will still receive the vehicles.
Parliament passed a law that now covers all former presidents, former deputy president, the Chief Justice.
Even Vice Presidents.
Vice
Kalonzo is
President.
receiving the
Kalonzo
same
is receiving
treatment.
the same.
And Raila, the Prime
Raila,
Minister,
Prime
former,
Minister.
is receiving the same.
All of them.
Because they were not impeached or removed.
Yeah, exactly. So if he resigns today, he keeps that entitlement and the packages. As to whether they'll be giving him, the government
It's
can, the government can say, like what used to happen for Raila, they used to say, we've not refused, it's just that we don't have the budgets. You understand?
Yeah.
Or they say we have a shortage of police officers, which could be a legal argument.
Oh, I
But
saw
they-
Kalonzo requesting for utensils, jembes, and forks the other day, and
Absolutely.
Kenyans were laughing. And he's entitled to them because
Yeah.
his office has a funding from the government.
Absolutely.
Kenyans are saying, when we're asking Ruto to go home, you're asking for forks and spoons.
Absolutely. So he won't be an ordinary citizen, he'll be a former deputy president.
But if he's impeached, if he goes through the process
Yeah.
and loses,
Which he's not going to. Fred, forget about the business of Gachagua making it to that vote. He's not. I don't know at what point does it become tactical to resign. Maybe he might, I don't know whether it's at the Senate stage, and I'm going to look up to that legally what it means. But if it's at the Senate stage is where the last impact is, he might hold on for a while to see what happens in Parliament. But if the impact starts from the National Assembly, then he has 3 days to make that solid decision. And the best one, for somebody who is angry and wants to deliver some revenge, the best time is to resign and now work on a new political move, which we'll do. And looking at listening at the voters, particularly his Murima base, which
Yes.
is what he's passionate about. Fred, there are people who never used to like him. I've listened to a few who now have changed their mind, not because they care much about Rigathi Gachagua, but they're just happy to see this government, this regime, because there's a difference between government and regime. Government, people have worked in there for 30 years. It's the regimes that come and go. There are people who badly want to see this regime go. So they do not necessarily like Gachagua, but they want to see 2 million votes or 3 million votes out of what the president got. You understand? And that is the best decision if I have to answer the question asked my brother here, James, as to what his advisors would be doing. I know for sure they are telling him, look, the way Moses Kuria, CS Moses Kuria likes to say, ukimwaga sijui maji, tunamwaga something. Tunamwaga unga. You understand? So they would love for him to challenge this president. And if that happens, President Ruto's first challenge for the next election will be radio election.
Now, after Gachagua is gone, what's the process of the president now selecting another deputy president? And does that deputy president enjoy the same protection of office like the elected one? Because this one will be selected.
Yeah, there's a process. There's a process. The law passed when we had a lacuna as to how governors can replace their deputies. There was a legislation that was passed in Parliament of how that process goes through, and that's how Sonko was when Sonko was replaced, and the lady that became governor had to appoint a deputy governor, something like that. And also, it has happened recently with Simba Arati, with his deputy governor. There's a legal process, so the president then nominates his preferred candidate. Then he has to go through vetting in Parliament, and once Parliament passes, he becomes formally sworn in as the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, and now formally he moves to Karen, which is a big decision, because the person that gets that position then now moves into a completely unfamiliar new grounds, and he becomes a formal Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya.
And enjoys all
Everything.
protection.
He becomes the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. You don't become halfway.
Because if you listen to James was talking about, the likes of Kindiki and the likes of Musalia Mudavadi being individuals that can be moved around. So when you are selected as the deputy president, obviously your allegiance now shifts.
Yeah.
It is not the people.
Yeah.
Your allegiance is to the one who appointed you.
Absolutely. And
Joe Biden was loyal to Obama.
Yes.
And probably is part of the reason why Obama campaigned so agitatingly, so abrasively and so passionately for Joe Biden. Even after his term elapsed. And even now, he was still supporting Joe Biden to his last knees.
Yes.
Until it reached a point and he advised Joe Biden to step down for Kamala Harris. And that is what presidents want. Presidents want. And it's the same thing. That is what husbands want.
They want somebody they can be able to puppeteer.
You want someone who can listen to you. You want someone who can stand with your policy decisions. You want someone who does not second guess you.
Yeah.
That is
and Gachagua was not that.
Gachagua was not that. Ruto thought he would intimidate Gachagua into that because he was a one-time MP. He forgot this is a billionaire.
Yeah.
I am not making him rich. He was already rich. And this is a tribal guy, probably as tribal as I am, and he knows how to speak to the masses, and he's going to electrify them with whatever he says. That is why he miscalculated. I am sure Ruto regrets choosing Gachagua.
Yeah.
He says in his heart and in his mind, I wish I chose Kithure Kindiki,
Yeah.
who they voted for. Because now I would have all my hands on him. I would have the reins of power on him. And when he would want to gaslight the people, I would pull him back.
Do you think, because it looks almost a foregone conclusion,
Yeah.
that Kindiki might be the blue-eyed boy?
Yeah, and that's why I want to come in, because for President William Ruto has to make this decision looking at the 2027 elections, that who then do I bring on board, but what impact does he have in terms of the elections in 2027, both in terms of mobilization of resources and the most important aspect, which is the numbers. How then do you bring it in? Kindiki Kithure comes from Mount Kenya East. Fred, if this president chooses a new deputy president from outside Mount Kenya, it's a done deal.
He's lost the election
completely. It has to be somebody from Mount Kenya, because in the other areas it's a big gamble. You know what has happened with the Gen Z and the movement that we have? We've created a new political base of young people that are going to tilt this election. I think all of us agree with that. You understand? And it's because we've not tested this president is yet to test the wrath of the people. That's why I am praying for the by-election.
that is yet to test the wrath of the people.
He hasn't. You know, he survived it on June 25th.
Yes.
You know, Kina Raila are not the people. And the people that you saw, almost 1 million kids that you saw on the streets of Nairobi, Fred,
They still hold a grudge.
They never left the country.
Yes.
You know, they are in the country.
Yes.
And those demonstrations happen in, I think, 35 counties. Those people are not outside the country. They are still there. You understand? They're just waiting for a moment where they can. You see, this president, different people have different issues with him. Gachagua has a political interest with them, which could be financial.
Yes.
But the other people on the streets who voted for him for other reasons, that maybe we as Mount Kenya are stakeholders in UDA, so we are going to vote for UDA. Once that change, he loses that place. There are those who voted for him elsewhere in Coast, which has been a stronghold area, 400,000 people, because they were saying maybe he can bring something new on the table. He has failed to perform. That is a different exit. You understand? Same to Western Kenya, I've told you, 611,000 people. A lot of times people think they only talk about Bungoma and the 250,000 votes he got. In Kakamega, President William Ruto got 144,000 votes, which is almost 20-30%, because 600,000 people turned up to vote. All those people did not vote. I know them. We don't come from Sugoi. He is not our uncle. They did not vote for him that because they like him. It's because at that point, I gave an example of how an uncle of mine kept saying, because he's a land surveyor, so he has a lot of interest in land. He used to say, the only person that can question this Kina Uhuru and people who took Mau Mau's land in their face is William Ruto. Let me just give him. He was saying it out of his own personal.
Yes.
If you go today and sit with him, he has a different opinion about the same president. Yet, it is that 600,000 in Western and the 400,000 in Coast that guaranteed this presidency. Central and Rift Valley could never elect him as president, even if they do it 10 times. You understand? Because there's a legal threshold. You need 24 counties.
Yes.
Central has 6. You understand?
Yes.
He's the region, Central Rift has 6. Those are 12. You need to get another 12.
Yes.
So nobody can statistically win a presidency with a region or 2. You have to cross over. And he luckily campaigned on a platform that a lot of people, particularly those in opposition and ODM, denied that reality. But those of us who are on the ground agree. There are people who genuinely, in areas where oppositions were, in Kisii, in Migori, in Kuria, and in Bukusuland, as you call it, and voted for this president. He won the election. Justice Smoking Wanjala, who comes from Busia, asked a very interesting question during the High Court, the Supreme Court session. He said, you've come here and said the server has been rigged. Let me, for example, agree with you on that one. But voting happens on at the polling station. And you had agents at the polling station. And the results were declared. That's why we have the 290 forms where they were declared.
Yes.
If you, for example, you agree results have been altered, at least you are the constituency, at Kangema constituency, when the returning officer announced the results. You understand?
Let me interrupt Senior Ngaira here. We remember the shenanigans about the agents all over the country when the former president Uhuru Kenyatta and the prime minister were working together to attempt to block Ruto from power. And we know they were working as a team in Azimio. And do you understand whatever happened with the agents? The conversation on the agents does not stop and has not stopped. That the agents for Azimio were not paid. And it is alleged that Jubilee and Uhuru Kenyatta was in charge of all that. He was supposed to bankroll the agents. He was supposed to pay them. But it is alleged that most of the agents, close to 6,000 or more, were not paid. With 46,000, were there 46,000 polling stations? With 46,000 polling stations, with close to 6,000 agents or more who are not paid, that tells you that they do not have the motivation and they do not have the incentive to follow through the whole process. So it's possible that in some polling stations, those results were not ratified because there is evidence of polling stations where agents signed from one side. From the papers were, Form 34s were signed from agents of UDA or one party, but were not signed by the other party.
Let's flip that, because now that one will be going back to the past. We have a situation now here. So Kithure Kindiki becomes the deputy president.
Mount Kenya East West.
Mount Kenya East. Does he have the muscle to be able to hold Mount Kenya East people and divide the vote within the Murema?
The person that Deputy President, President William Ruto is supposed to have as a Deputy President must bring in both numbers and resources. Numbers, it means the numbers he got, 3.4 million, must remain or at least go up. The resources that you need to mobilize in that particular region must be equal to what is needed at this point in time, because the voters in Mount Kenya of 2022 are not the voters of Mount Kenya today. Many of them have since changed their minds. A million of them didn't vote for this government in the first place. Then there's another 3.4 million that voted for this government. More than half of that have since changed their minds. So there's first an internal war that they have, an internal order that is supposed to be restored. And that candidate, if he doesn't come from that region, this president then starts at -2 or -3 million. There is no any other region, Fred, I've told you, that this president can go to and collect 3 million votes. So it's a tough challenge because he might want to have Amsalia, a puppet, somebody that he can push around. You understand? Or Kindiki. But he must also do so because a deputy president plays a critical role. If I'm running for governor of Kakamega and I come from Kakamega North, it is tactical that my running mate must come from South. So that at least in terms of bringing the numbers together, the entire region has to do that. That's one. So tactically first is the region. Then two, it is nicer if that person also can be able to mobilize, because then we are in an elective race. I think this president has that challenge because if he were to choose, then he would very easily choose Kindiki, Kithure and Musalia. But something else you must also add. That candidate must be somebody who can potentially be president in 2032 and take care of his interest. So who among those people can mount a serious presidential campaign in 2032? So that in case of where I have had a young Morara the other day when he was coming out of court saying, if I'm to be by stroke of luck be president of this country, I will jail William Ruto. I think you heard what he said. So the president he's fully aware that there are characters who would want to do that. You understand? It happens. It's not news in Africa. An opponent can jail you once he gets power. You see what President Edgar Lungu is going through in Zambia today. He's in court every day. Every day. So that person must do three things. Be able to mobilize resources, be able to bring in numbers, and must be a potential president in the next election so that he can guarantee his safe stay.
And do you see Kindiki that?
The former Laikipia women rep, if I am not wrong, Kate Waruguru, is actually a better campaigner than Kithure Kindiki.
By far.
And it's funny. That Moses Kuria with his vulgarity is even a better mobilizer and campaigner than Kithure Kindiki. That even Kabogo himself and Waititu, our own Waititu, I'm saying our own because Kiambu is just a stone throw away. Waititu is even a better campaigner than Kithure. You can change so many things in a man. You can groom him, you can dress him nicely, you can give him power, resources and everything, and that would not change what he is. I would say Kithure Kindiki is a closet politician. He's never really come of age, I would say. His kind of politics is what we do not have in this country. He practices, say, liberal politics from the UK and the USA, and we've still not gotten to that point. Kenyans want sensational people, and that is where the problem is, because he's not sensational. There is nothing interesting about Kindiki. I do not even know why they preferred him, probably because he's a professor. But fellows like Nyoro and Kimani Ichung'wah would actually make better deputy presidents than this guy Kithure Kindiki. Even Waiguru is a fires campaigner. And I'm thinking of a situation where the president wants someone he can control. But then that someone will not deliver anything in 2027 if he's looking at politics tribally. Yes. Kithure is not going to deliver anything. Because an impeached Gachagua.
When you say he cannot deliver anything, at least he can deliver Mount Kenya East.
Mount Kenya, how many votes, how many MPs follow him? How many MPs follow him? Even from Tharaka Nithi County itself, how many
if
MPs
President Uhuru Kenyatta, at the height of the ICC campaigns, Meru County gave out ODM members of parliament. And Uhuru was a little campaigner, never mind he was a prince. But you can tell, hardly, many people do not know, Kenyatta was a younger brother to the president, can hardly speak Kikuyu. But for President Uhuru Kenyatta, is very fluent with Kikuyu and has been able to be able to campaign, but still could not convert 100%. Even with this current president, with the talent that he has as a politician, campaigned in Mount Kenya as his base.
I should also add that during Uhuru Kenyatta's time, a fires campaigner and mobilizer like Moses Kuria got his way into the corridors of power in Gatundu and into the bedroom of the president with a fires campaigner like Uhuru Kenyatta was. So tell me how Kindiki is going to command Tharaka Nithi County, not Mount Kenya East.
Yeah, it's impossible.
He is unable to deliver anything. He has a good name, a big name like Musalia Mudavadi has, but that is just a name. It's good for sure, but not good for numbers if they're looking at stuff tribally. And that is why they are missing it. Because I wish these people started campaigning on grounds of unifying the entire country above tribal lines, because now we will not have a Gen Z situation. We will not have a tribal situation where people feel you're too corrupt and you're too tribal. Because one of the biggest problems in this country is tribalism. And if youths felt that this government is uniting, we would now be facing a problem of corruption, which they will deal with by law. You can't deal with tribalism by law.
There's a gentleman who's been so quiet.
Yeah.
Dindi Nyoro. Did not even append his signature.
Yeah.
So,
Dindi Nyoro is a young man and is a young politician who has a career to build. And I think he has taken time to listen to the ground. Fred, until this president faces some sort of elective competition. And that's why I'm really hoping for the by-elections. I was even telling somebody yesterday that as a social experiment, now that we had the Gen Z movement who now have an issue with this president, I can't wait for even just the small by-elections and then just see whether this president can be able to beat these young people in the first, before we even go to the presidential candidates and all those people. Fred, if I cannot defeat you in a ward, I can't tell you I'll defeat you across the country, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you see, that is the challenge that this president then he has to face. And so Kindiki Kithure and any other person that this president chooses, from where I sit, Fred, and I see we are running out of time, is that probably this president shouldn't have gone ahead with this process of impeaching Gachagua. I think this is why sometimes in leadership trainings, when you go to executive trainings as a leader, they teach you what you call emotional intelligence, because you're managing human beings. And it's possible that Ngaira can have this personality, James can have that personality. And as a leader, you must be able to accommodate both the personality and the talents so that you bring the best of it. I could be having a PhD in marketing and sales, but I do not have a proactive personality to sell a product. And the other person could be a trained engineer, but he has the personality to be able to sell a product. As a leader, you might hire them first on the basis of their papers, so they're your employees, but you can say, I want you in this particular decision. Because somebody else might think it's too loud, but that loudness is what you need as a brand. So as a leader, then you need that what you call emotional intelligence. This decision to undergo this process, whether or not it succeeds, has messed up this president and his politics of 2022.
With me
closing comments, yes.
With me here is the public views template, this is what the public will be given today across the entire country for the public participation. And I would want to say that public participation in this country is ceremonial. Gachagua is counting on this public participation to challenge court. Probably it's one of the pillars he wants to use and say to the courts and move a motion to the courts, a petition that, as you see, the Kenyan people probably do not want me out. If it happens that 60% or 55% of the Kenyans say we want Ruto and Gachagua go, not Gachagua alone. Yes. So they would say the public wants me in office, and if I'm to be removed from office, they want me and the president gone. So if he's supposed to use this, I don't know what metrics he'll use, because public participation in this country does not count. Because we went through the public participation, we decried the housing levy, but they still passed it. Yes. So I would think that the impeachment of the deputy president, though ill-timed, the president is trying to plan for 2027. And he has a problem because he thinks he's taming Gachagua because he's too zealous and too ambitious. But he has forgotten he was like Gachagua before. And Uhuru condoned him because he wanted to go for a re-election in 2017. If Uhuru had kicked out Ruto in the first term, there is a possibility that he would never have gone through with the second term, because Ruto would have ganged together with Raila Odinga because they are pals. They have been pals before. And Uhuru would never have secured a second term. Ruto has forgotten he's 3 years away from a second term. And it is possible that this same Gachagua can band with Uhuru, Ndindi Nyoro, and any other lawmaker from Mount Kenya to go against the president. You see, in 2017 to 2022, when Ruto was doing his campaigns, he almost had no one. There was a time, I remember the media doing a round table, the president asking him, wewe umejipanga aje? We see Uhuru Kenyatta with Raila Odinga almost everywhere with MPs across the country.
And every top leader in the country.
Doing countrywide tours. But you are all here in Karen. We do not understand your strategy. You are always speaking alone. Then Ruto told them that yeye anapanga mambo yake. And you saw he pangad mambo yake. He took student leaders and students from across the country. He talked to them probably with the inducement of some little cash here and there. He took MPs from all over the country with some inducements here and there. I mean, that is the time when the brown envelope stuff was so rampant, and everyone knew that there are brown envelopes that are always dished at Karen. He even did that to the church itself. Bishops and clerics were going off Karen with brown envelopes. So he has forgotten that it is possible for man to not have something and to build it from scratch. If Gachagua resigns today, he can build himself from scratch to take away 3/4 of the mountain, because that is what Ruto is still counting on from him, and he is going to be able to convince other Mount Kenya MPs to follow him. He already has a following, whether 30 or 40, he already has a following of MPs, and that following could increase if they feel this guy is speaking our language, because at one point Ruto had no one, and Ruto has forgotten that this Raila Odinga is not to be trusted. If we don't trust Raila Odinga as the entire Kenyan population, how is he now trusting him that Raila will deliver to me Nyanza and Western? I mean, Raila anaweza amua hata huyu jamaa pia amebeba wa Kenya siku mingi. I've gotten what I wanted, the UCC. I mean, why do I have to deliver to him? There's no written agreement. You remember the yangu 10 yake 10? It was not a written agreement. Yes. If Raila decided to jump ship, Ruto atamfanyia.
All right, that's a matrix of Kenyan politics, and fortunate or unfortunate. But one thing that I noted this week, and that got me very concerned, was the way the new social health system has been implemented.
Absolutely.
It's a disaster, and mostly so. I have a mother who goes through dialysis. Thank God that we were able to move her way in advance, and she's been getting her sessions, or she has gotten her session. Now there are people who are supposed to go through dialysis, and this week they've not gone through dialysis.
Yeah.
And I have seen what the delay of dialysis can do to somebody's body. Yeah. It happened once to my mom. It is horrible. It is horrible. And I was feeling like I could scream and shout when I saw an old man yesterday. I mean, this old man was crying. I think he's almost in his 70s, going to 80s. He's missed his dialysis session, and he's saying when he's going to the hospitals, they're asking him for money, and the amount depending on where you're going, could be almost even 9,000 shillings. And he's saying, I don't have this money. Now, my blood is not working. Seeing an old man crying like that, and then seeing both the private hospitals and the government officials in the Ministry of Health flexing their muscle, and you see this old man, it is unfortunate. These are the things that bring curses on people. Surely, how do you expect these people to live if they don't get their dialysis sessions? These are things that whoever plotted this should have put into motion, taken into consideration. How do you migrate these people flawlessly so that they don't miss their sessions? So it's very unfortunate, and you know, they say the buck stops with the head and fish rots from the head. This one is at State House, right at the doors of State House. I pray that we don't lose any person because of this transition. As with that, we bring the curtains down on this show. Please pray for those people as this transition takes place. Do have yourself a lovely morning.